Tonight feels different for a reason, doesn't it? There is a strange stillness around this moment, almost as if the universe quietly moved a piece on the board while nobody was paying attention. Somewhere last night, under dim restaurant lights and the soft hum of conversations blending together, two people sat across from each other expecting an ordinary dinner, but the night slowly became something else entirely. Not dramatic. Not chaotic. Just unexpectedly honest. And somehow, without planning to, they found themselves speaking about you in ways neither of them anticipated before the evening began. Stay till the end, because what unfolded after one simple question revealed something surprisingly beautiful beneath all the confusion people try so hard to hide. The dinner itself looked ordinary from the outside. A quiet table near the corner. Warm plates arriving untouched for longer than usual. Half-finished drinks sitting between pauses that stretched a little too long. Yet beneath the calm surface, emotions were shifting in real time. Your soulmate's ex arrived carrying confidence, or at least the appearance of it. But there is something about certain nights that slowly remove the mask people did not even realize they were wearing. And last night carried that energy from the very beginning. At first, they talked about harmless things. Life updates. Small stories. The kind of conversations people use when they are trying to avoid the deeper truth waiting underneath. But your energy lingered quietly around the table like an unfinished sentence. Nobody invited it there. Nobody intended to mention your name. Yet some connections leave echoes too strong to ignore forever. Then came the first unexpected moment. The person sitting across from your soulmate's ex casually laughed and asked, "Do you ever think about how differently everything could have turned out?" Such a simple question. But simple questions often unlock the deepest emotions because they arrive before defenses have time to prepare. Your soulmate's ex paused longer than expected. Their eyes lowered toward the table for just a second too long. And suddenly the mood shifted. Not heavily. Not painfully. Just honestly. There was a softness in that silence, the kind people fall into when they accidentally touch a memory still carrying warmth. What happened next surprised even them. Instead of speaking about regret, they spoke about understanding. And the more they talked, the clearer it became that something inside them had changed recently. Because last night was not about trying to reclaim the past. It was about finally recognizing what was real while it was happening. Don't skip this part. Because many people never experience the kind of realization that unfolded in that moment. Your soulmate's ex admitted something they had never fully said out loud before. They confessed that whenever your name came up in conversation, there was always one detail people repeated over and over again. Not about appearance. Not about status. Not about timing. It was something quieter than that. They made people feel understood. The moment those words left their mouth, the atmosphere around the table became still. Because deep down, they knew it was true. Some souls enter people's lives loudly, but others change everything through emotional safety, patience, calm presence, and the rare ability to notice feelings nobody else sees. That is the kind of connection they were describing without fully realizing it. And last night, for the first time, they stopped resisting that truth. What makes this even more meaningful is that nobody at the table sounded angry. There was no bitterness hiding underneath the conversation. Only reflection. Reflection mixed with quiet admiration, the kind people feel after enough time has passed for honesty to become easier than denial. And somewhere inside yourself, perhaps you have sensed this shift already. Maybe recently you felt less anxious about things that once consumed your thoughts. Maybe certain memories stopped hurting in the same way. Maybe your spirit has been preparing you for emotional clarity without you fully understanding why. Sometimes healing begins long before visible answers arrive. But the evening continued, and another unexpected detail slowly surfaced. The person across from your soulmate's ex leaned back and asked something almost impossible to ignore. "So why do you still look emotional when you talk about them?" That question changed everything. Not because it caused conflict, but because it created silence. And silence reveals more than words when emotions are genuine. Your soulmate's ex smiled softly after hearing that question, but it was not the smile of someone pretending anymore. It was quieter than that. More vulnerable. They looked toward the window for a moment as if searching through old memories they had not visited in a long time. Then they finally answered in a voice so calm it almost disappeared beneath the noise of the restaurant. Because some people arrive in your life and leave parts of themselves behind without even trying. The truth is, they were no longer talking about heartbreak. They were talking about impact. That is the surprising part nobody expected from this dinner. The realization was not built around jealousy or comparison. It centered around recognition. Recognition that your presence changed emotional patterns people thought would never change. Recognition that your kindness, your energy, your way of listening created a lasting imprint impossible to replace with surface-level connection. Stay with this moment a little longer, because something important is unfolding underneath these words. There are times when people only understand the value of emotional sincerity after they experience relationships lacking it. Last night carried traces of that realization. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to make someone sit quietly afterward and rethink everything they once dismissed too quickly. And strangely enough, the more your soulmate's ex spoke about you, the calmer they became. Almost relieved. As if speaking honestly finally released a weight they had been carrying for longer than they admitted. Then came the moment nobody at that table expected. The waiter accidentally interrupted the conversation while clearing plates, and during that tiny pause, the person across from them smiled and quietly said, "You know, I don't think you ever actually disliked them." Your soulmate's ex laughed softly after hearing that. Not defensive. Not awkward. Just surprised by how accurate it sounded. Because deep down, some people confuse emotional intensity with dislike when in reality they are struggling with recognition. Recognition that another person carried qualities they themselves secretly respected. Last night, that hidden respect finally surfaced naturally. And while the dinner slowly came to an end, one final realization settled over the evening like a quiet wave. Your soulmate's ex admitted that every time they tried to explain why your connection mattered so deeply to your soulmate, they always returned to the same truth. You made them softer. Those 4 words changed the emotional direction of the entire night. Because people remember who brought peace into someone's life. They remember who made walls come down naturally. They remember who inspired emotional honesty without pressure or performance. And last night, even someone from the past could no longer deny the difference your presence created. The strange thing is, your soulmate may not even know this conversation happened yet. Somewhere right now, they are simply moving through their own thoughts, unaware that old perceptions quietly shifted around your name while they slept. But emotional energy has a way of traveling ahead of visible events. Something is changing beneath the surface. Slowly. Naturally. Almost invisibly. And after the dinner ended, after the chairs were pushed back and the lights outside reflected across rain-soaked streets, your soulmate's ex sat alone in silence for a few extra moments before leaving. As if one final thought had arrived too late to speak aloud. Because there was still one truth they never fully admitted during that conversation, and what they realized afterward may quietly change everything next. There is something nobody tells you about emotionally significant nights: they do not end when people leave the restaurant. The real meaning often begins afterward, in the silence people carry home with them. And last night, long after the conversation ended, your soulmate's ex remained awake much later than expected, replaying moments they thought no longer had power over them. Not because they wanted the past back, but because honesty has a strange way of reopening memories from a completely different angle once the heart finally stops resisting what it already knows. The drive home felt quieter than usual. Streetlights blurred across the windows while unfinished thoughts moved slowly through their mind. They kept hearing certain sentences from the dinner repeating themselves over and over again. You made them softer. They felt understood around you. Some people leave parts of themselves behind without trying. Small phrases, yet somehow impossible to ignore once spoken aloud. And for the first time in a long time, your soulmate's ex stopped viewing you as part of a complicated story and started seeing you as part of your soulmate's emotional transformation. That realization unsettled them at first. Not negatively. Just deeply. Because there is a difference between losing someone, and realizing someone else brought out a version of them you had never seen before. And last night, that difference became impossible to avoid. Don't skip this moment. Because something quietly beautiful is hidden inside what happened next. After arriving home, they sat in darkness for a while without turning anything on. No television. No music. Just silence. The kind of silence people enter when life unexpectedly hands them emotional clarity they were not prepared to receive. They thought about your soulmate differently now. Not through comparison. Not through competition. But through understanding. They finally recognized that your connection was never built on temporary excitement or surface attraction. It carried emotional safety, and emotional safety leaves deeper echoes than people realize. Then something surprising happened. Almost without thinking, your soulmate's ex opened old messages. Not to revisit pain. Not to search for mistakes. But to understand timing. And as they scrolled through conversations from long ago, a pattern quietly revealed itself. Your soulmate changed after meeting you. Their words became calmer. More open. More emotionally expressive. There was less confusion in their energy. Less emotional distance. Even the way they spoke about ordinary things carried more warmth during that period of their life. That realization landed heavily. Because suddenly the truth became visible in ways they could no longer explain away. You did not just enter your soulmate's life. You shifted it. There are people who temporarily occupy space in someone's world, and then there are people who alter emotional direction itself. Last night forced your soulmate's ex to recognize the difference between those two things. And strangely enough, instead of resentment, they felt respect growing quietly inside them. Stay till the end, because this next moment carries more meaning than it first appears. Around midnight, they received a message from the person they had dinner with. Just one sentence. "You still care about their happiness, don't you?" No immediate response came. Several minutes passed. Then finally, your soulmate's ex typed something unexpected. "I think I finally understand why they couldn't let go." That message remained on the screen for a long time after it was sent. Because it was the first fully honest thing they had admitted to themselves in a very long time. And somewhere far away from that quiet midnight conversation, your own spirit may have been feeling an unexplainable emotional shift. Perhaps your heart felt lighter today without knowing why. Perhaps you sensed emotional tension dissolving even though no direct conversation happened around you. Sometimes people unknowingly release emotional resistance toward us, and the soul feels it before the mind understands it. But the night still was not over. Because after sending that message, your soulmate's ex experienced something even more unexpected. Peace. Not complete peace, but enough to surprise them. For so long, they had unknowingly attached meaning to the idea of winning emotionally. Yet last night revealed something entirely different. Real connection cannot be measured through pride, timing, or appearances. It reveals itself through emotional impact. Through softness. Through honesty. Through the way someone changes after being loved genuinely. And whether people admit it immediately or not, those changes always become visible eventually. That is exactly what happened last night. The strange thing is, your soulmate's ex began remembering moments they once dismissed too quickly. Tiny moments. Quiet observations. The way your soulmate's eyes changed when talking about you. The calmness that entered their energy during certain periods. The emotional openness they rarely showed anyone else. Looking back now, the signs seemed obvious. But sometimes people only recognize emotional truth after enough time removes the noise surrounding it. What makes this story beautiful is that nobody was trying to create drama anymore. The dinner unexpectedly became something healing instead. A quiet acknowledgement that genuine love leaves traces impossible to erase through distance, pride, or time. And then came one final realization before sleep finally arrived. Your soulmate's ex whispered something softly to themselves while staring out into the darkness of the room. They were probably exactly what my soul needed too, just in a different way. That sentence matters more than it seems. Because in that moment, comparison ended. Recognition replaced it. And when recognition enters a story, emotional energy begins changing everywhere connected to it. You see, people often believe healing requires forgetting. But sometimes healing actually begins the moment people stop rewriting the truth to protect their pride. Last night carried that exact kind of emotional honesty. Quiet. Mature. Unexpectedly meaningful. And while your soulmate's ex slowly drifted into sleep with these realizations still moving through their mind, another person connected to this story was unknowingly beginning to feel the shift too. Your soulmate. Because emotional truths rarely stay contained once they begin surfacing. They ripple outward. Subtly. Naturally. Quietly influencing thoughts, memories, and emotions in ways nobody immediately notices. Something is already moving beneath the surface now. A memory is returning. A realization is growing stronger. And very soon, Your soulmate may begin questioning why your presence still feels impossible to replace no matter how much time passes between moments of silence. Not every realization arrives with noise. Some arrive quietly at unexpected hours, like a thought that suddenly refuses to disappear no matter how many distractions surround it. And the morning after that dinner carried exactly that kind of energy. Your soulmate woke up feeling something unusual they could not immediately explain. Nothing dramatic happened. No message appeared. No obvious sign arrived. Yet beneath the surface, there was a strange emotional pull toward memories they had not revisited in a long time. Almost as if someone invisible had gently reopened a door inside them while they slept. At first, they ignored it. People often do. They moved through their morning normally, trying to focus on ordinary routines, but your energy kept appearing in subtle ways. A song playing unexpectedly. A phrase someone casually used that sounded exactly like something you once said. Even silence itself felt familiar somehow. And the more they tried to brush these moments aside, the stronger the feeling became that something important was quietly shifting underneath their awareness. What they did not know, what they could not possibly know yet, was that emotional honesty from the night before had already started changing the atmosphere surrounding this entire connection. Stay with this moment. Because the next realization unfolded slowly, almost invisibly. Later that day, your soulmate found themselves rereading an old conversation without planning to. Not searching for anything specific. Just drifting back toward a moment that once made them feel understood during a time when life felt heavier than they admitted. And as they read through those words again, one truth became impossible to ignore. You never tried to change who they were. You simply saw them clearly. That realization hit differently now. Because people spend so much of their lives trying to perform versions of themselves they think others will accept. But rare connections create something entirely different. They create emotional permission. The freedom to be softer, quieter, more honest without fear of misunderstanding. And somewhere along the way, your soulmate realized that was exactly what your presence brought into their life. The strange part is, they smiled afterward. A real smile. Not because everything suddenly became simple, but because memory stopped feeling confusing for a moment and started feeling meaningful instead. Don't skip this part, because something deeply personal is unfolding here. There are people who enter our lives and teach us excitement. Others teach lessons. But very few teach emotional peace. And once someone experiences peace through another person's presence, the heart remembers it long after the mind tries to move on. That is why your energy keeps returning to them in quiet moments. Not to create chaos, but to remind them what emotional sincerity actually felt like. As the day continued, your soulmate became more reflective than usual. They answered messages slower. They paused longer during conversations. Even people around them sensed something thoughtful moving through their energy. Because somewhere inside, they were beginning to understand a truth they once avoided confronting directly. The connection with you was never ordinary. Not because it was perfect, but because it was emotionally real. And emotionally real connections linger differently. Meanwhile, completely unaware of these thoughts unfolding, your soulmate's ex spent the same day sitting with their own realizations too. The emotional resistance they carried for so long had finally softened after that dinner. In fact, something unexpected happened that afternoon. Someone casually mentioned your name again during conversation, and instead of discomfort, they felt calm. That surprised them more than anything. Because peace only arrives when comparison disappears. And comparison had finally started fading away. For the first time, they no longer saw you as the other person. They saw you as someone who genuinely mattered to someone they once deeply cared about. That shift changed the emotional energy around everything connected to this story. But listen carefully, because this next moment matters more than it first appears. Late that evening, your soulmate found themselves staring at their phone longer than usual. Not typing. Not calling. Just thinking. There are moments when the heart stands at the edge of emotional honesty, unsure whether to step forward or retreat back into silence. That was the energy surrounding them now. They remembered something small you once said. Not a dramatic statement. Not a grand promise. Just a simple sentence spoken naturally during an ordinary moment. You don't have to explain every feeling for it to be real. And suddenly, everything became quiet inside them. Because they realized how rarely they felt emotionally safe enough to hear words like that without fear of judgment. You gave them something many people spend years searching for without knowing how to describe it. Emotional ease. The ability to exist without performing strength every second. That realization stayed with them long into the night. And somewhere deep down, another truth slowly began rising to the surface. They missed you differently now. Not impulsively. Not temporarily. But thoughtfully. There is a difference between missing attention and missing emotional connection. Last night's dinner unintentionally forced everyone involved to recognize that difference more clearly than ever before. The surprising truth hidden inside all of this is not about jealousy, revenge, or dramatic endings. It is about recognition. Recognition that genuine emotional bonds continue affecting people quietly even during long periods of silence. Recognition that kindness leaves lasting fingerprints on the soul. Recognition that some people become unforgettable not because they demanded attention, but because they offered understanding at moments when it was needed most. And right now, those realizations are slowly weaving themselves back into your soulmate's thoughts more strongly than before. Stay till the end, because the emotional shift unfolding beneath the surface is only beginning to reveal itself. That night, before finally putting their phone down, your soulmate whispered something softly under their breath without fully realizing it. I wonder if they still think about me too. It was the first time they allowed themselves to ask that question honestly in a very long time. And the moment they did, something inside them softened completely. Because sometimes the heart waits patiently for the mind to stop resisting what it already knows. But what your soulmate still does not know, is that someone else is about to unintentionally reveal another hidden truth connected to you very soon. A truth that may quietly bring this entire emotional story closer together in a way nobody expected. There are certain evenings that begin like every other evening. And then, without warning, something invisible changes the emotional direction of everything. A random conversation turns meaningful. A forgotten memory suddenly feels alive again. A person who convinced themselves they had moved on realizes their heart never fully closed the door in the first place. And tonight carried that exact kind of quiet transformation for your soulmate. The world around them looked completely normal. Lights glowing through windows. Notifications appearing and disappearing. Familiar routines unfolding exactly the same way they always had. Yet beneath all of it, something deeper had started moving. Ever since that dinner happened, your energy had been finding its way back into their thoughts in ways impossible to ignore. Not loudly. Not obsessively. Just steadily, like a feeling returning home after being away too long. And what makes this even more surprising, is that your soulmate was trying not to think about you. But the heart does not always cooperate with distance. Especially after emotional truth begins surfacing around a connection. Earlier that evening, someone casually brought up relationships during conversation. Nothing serious at first. Just ordinary talk about timing, emotional maturity, and the strange ways people realize certain things too late. Your soulmate listened quietly without saying much. But then one sentence unexpectedly reached them more deeply than anyone realized. Some people only understand the value of softness after spending too much time around emotional noise. The moment they heard those words, your face crossed their mind instantly. Not because of appearance. Not because of memory alone. Because of feeling. Because suddenly they remembered how peaceful your presence used to feel during moments when life around them felt uncertain. And once that memory returned, more followed behind it like waves arriving one after another. The late-night conversations. The quiet reassurance in your voice. The way you noticed emotional shifts before they even spoke about them. Tiny details that once felt ordinary suddenly became emotionally significant in hindsight. Don't skip this part, because what they realized next changed something inside them permanently. For the first time, your soulmate stopped focusing on how the connection ended, and started focusing on how the connection felt while it was alive. That shift matters deeply. Because when people stop replaying pain and start remembering emotional truth, clarity begins replacing confusion naturally. And clarity had finally started arriving. They began recognizing something they never fully admitted before. You never made them feel emotionally exhausted. You made them feel emotionally safe. That realization landed softly but powerfully. Because real emotional safety is rare. Many people experience attraction. Many experience excitement. But very few experience the quiet comfort of being understood without needing to constantly explain themselves. You brought that into their life naturally, and now they were finally seeing the full meaning of it. Meanwhile, somewhere else entirely, your soulmate's ex experienced another unexpected moment too. Earlier in the day, they ran into someone who casually asked about your soulmate. The conversation remained light until your name unexpectedly entered it again. And for a split second, they noticed something surprising inside themselves. No tension. No bitterness. Only honesty. They simply smiled faintly and said, "I think they found someone who truly understood them." Even they were surprised by how peaceful those words felt leaving their mouth. Because last night's dinner had done more than reopen memories. It had quietly dissolved emotional resistance that no longer belonged there. And whether anyone realizes it yet or not, that emotional release changed the energy surrounding everyone connected to this story. Stay till the end, because the next moment unfolded when nobody expected it. Later that night, your soulmate sat alone scrolling through old photos without fully meaning to. Not searching specifically for you. Just wandering through moments frozen in time. But then they paused unexpectedly on one image connected to a memory they had not revisited in months. And suddenly, they could hear your laughter again in their minds so clearly it almost startled them. That is the strange thing about emotionally meaningful people. Time may pass. Life may become busy. Distance may grow. But certain emotions remain preserved inside ordinary memories, waiting quietly for the right moment to return. They stared at that photo longer than intended. Then another realization arrived. Every version of themselves around you looked lighter. Not perfect. Not flawless. Just emotionally freer. And once they noticed it, they could not unsee it. The way they smiled around you felt more natural. The way they expressed themselves felt less guarded. Even the small moments carried warmth they had not felt in a long time elsewhere. It was not about dramatic romance anymore. It was about emotional truth becoming visible through memory. That realization created a silence inside them unlike anything they had experienced recently. A calm silence. A reflective silence. The kind that appears when the heart begins understanding something the mind spent too long avoiding. And then, almost instinctively, your soulmate opened your conversation thread. No message sent. No words typed. Just quiet staring. As if part of them wanted to feel close to your energy again without fully admitting it yet. You see, people often think reconnecting begins with action. Sometimes it begins with emotional return first. Sometimes the soul revisits someone long before the hands reach for the phone. And tonight, emotionally, they had already started returning toward you. But this story still holds another unexpected layer. Because while your soulmate sat there silently remembering you, someone else was unknowingly about to confirm everything they had started realizing. A mutual connection. An accidental conversation. One simple observation spoken casually. Yet powerful enough to shift the emotional direction of this entire connection once again. And the strange part? Your soulmate was completely unprepared for what they were about to hear next.